Hey guys, what's up? I hope you guys are having a great day. Um, so recently I had a lot of experiences where I sort of noticed that this person was not myself and that I was far more than that. And I've had a few experiences kind of lined up. Uh, and I've learned some things that I think may be helpful to people to avoid the trap of the person, to avoid the illusion of the person. So, just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll give you some background. That way, we can go ahead all informed. So, and actually, I might, for people who already know what I'm going to say, then you can go ahead and skip to the time in the description, and it should take you to the point in the video where I actually start talking. But anyways, so basically we have all these beliefs in our minds that we're assuming a lot of different things, not just one, that you're a person, but two, that this reality even exists in the first place. Now I know that that's like, Trey, of course it exists, I can see it, but there's a lot of things that we assume about our existence and about this world and about our everyday lives that we kind of get lost in them, and we forget what the core of all this is and what's actually here, right? Because we get so messed up in like these different things. Like, for example, we have social structures like, oh, like this is my mom, and this is my dad, and this is my little brother, and this is my cousin, and this is my aunt, and this is my uncle, and this is my grandpa. It's like these things are things that we've sort of created as like roles. And so there's roles, there's things like the idea that right now this controller and this hand are separate from each other, while in reality there's no separation. All kinds of things that we are always sort of assuming as we go about our lives. And so when you can sort of see these assumptions, you're seeing it from a perspective of not believing it. And what ends up happening is your entire reality begins to look a lot different, and you no longer have these barriers that you normally have in your life, such as being upset with somebody. Because if anything, you start to realize the totality of everything, and you start to realize that whatever conflict this person has with you is also your conflict, because there is no separation. So there's this basically they call this enlightenment or spiritual realization, or whatever you want to call it. But I want to give you I want to help maybe prevent some things that you may come across, that I've come across, that I'm definitely learning my lesson on. So rule number one: being enlightened isn't something that you have to like accomplish and then like everything changes all at once. It's more like you learn to pay attention, and when you learn to pay attention, you sort of start like, it sort of just kind of starts happening, and you may notice more things that you weren't paying as much attention at in the beginning. And so like you may be better and better at paying attention as you move forward. And what I mean by that is your thoughts are not yours, they are this person's thoughts. And so at some point you just notice, you start paying attention, because actually something that I've noticed after these experiences have worn off is that I'll start to realize I'm like sleeping half the time. And I don't mean like literal sleeping, I just mean that I get so engaged with my thoughts that I won't be as present in the moment. I'll, be petting my dog and realize that I was just thinking about something for like a split 2 seconds and that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. Where before, during my experiences, I was paying full attention to the moment. And so, basically, that's actually a disclaimer. That wasn't rule number one. I messed up there. But that's just sort of a disclaimer. It doesn't, it happens in different ways, don't get me wrong. So my experience may not be the same as yours. But rule number one is you don't have to do anything. You're completely fine where you're at. You don't have to be better, or you don't have to go out and do something or go out and try something. All you've got to do is notice. And I'm going to explain that in a second. Okay, so rule number 2, don't draw conclusions. So when you draw conclusions, it gets a little confusing. I started to figure it out and like have a logical understanding of it, and it ended up being a little flawed. And what I mean by that is when I have a logical understanding of it, I started getting more wrapped up in the person, forgetting that this logical understanding was not mine, but this person's. So if you are going to draw conclusions, I would say be careful and make sure that you know that the conclusions you are drawing are not, in fact, your conclusions, but the person's conclusions. And this next step, this next rule or step or helpful hint or whatever you want to call it, is going to be the most helpful to most everybody. And I say it because it's really been helpful to me to re-enter the truth, or to begin to notice the truth. So before, I would try to convince myself of these truths. Like, okay, there's no separation, there's no body. So the moment I would have a thought, like, if I had a thought that said, I need to do this, or I need to go do this, or this person does not think good of me, or something like that. Anytime I thought of that, before I would say, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense technically, because technically I am not that, right? So what I noticed was I would convince myself out of it, and like using logic. And this is really key because it does not require logic. You can think of this as the subject and the mind as the object. So the self is the subject, and the self is timeless, and the self just is. The object that you're looking at is the mind. So imagine that the mind thinks it's the subject and begins to find the object within the subject. So within itself, it thinks it's the subject and begins to look for the object in itself, while really the whole is the object and you are the subject seeing the object. So that may have been like, whoa, what? Like, maybe I should like go back and watch that again. And maybe you should. But the point that I'm trying to make is the mind requires a understanding. It requires information backing it up. So this is really amazing because my whole life I've held on to knowledge like it's the most important thing, and it is not. It is not the most important thing. We as human beings think that everything we say needs to be validated or backed up by some kind of facts or emotional feelings or something like that. That's not true. In fact, all you have to know is the truth. And when I say that, I mean like the truth doesn't require a backing. So I would say there is no me. Or I could say that this person is the one having these thoughts, right? But see, when this when a thought form would come into my head and say, uh, oh, well, I'm having a bad day, or this, sorry, not this person, or that person thinks bad of me. Anytime those kinds of thoughts came up, I would simply recognize or notice that the person having these thoughts is not me. And in other words, it's kind of like saying, that's not my problem. Or I'm seeing reality through this problem. Okay? So the thing is, though, I never thought these words in my head. Anytime I did, sometimes I would actually say in my head, that person's not me. And then I would look again and recognize that the mind was saying the person's not me. And then when I did that, I would let go of it. It doesn't require you to pay much attention to it. All it requires is slight attention. Just a little bit. No logic required, just a noticing. Just notice it. Just like when something happens, some small random event happens in front of you, and you notice it, but you don't go, oh, that guy just passed by on a bike. I wonder what that guy's name was, or whatever. Like, you just notice the guy, you don't think anything in your head, and you move on. That's kind of what it's like. It's like this guy or this girl that is thinking about the words I'm saying right now is not in fact you. And while as I say that, the mind will try to understand it, you are seeing that right now. You are seeing those thoughts, trying to understand the words that I am saying, and that's not you. So, in saying that, just recognize that this will make the mind really messy. If you take some time and you start trying to participate in this, things are going to get messy. Things are going to get really sloppy. The mind's going to give you a headache. It happened to me. At some point I realized this person that's trying this is not me. And then every conversation that comes up, sometimes I'll think, oh, well, now I figured it out. And I think, well, I'll have to go talk to so-and-so and say this, right? But then I have to notice again, that's not me. Every time there's a word or a phrase or a sentence or a memory, that's not me. That is, in fact, this person. Anytime I say words, anytime I receive anytime I see anything through my eyes or hear anything through my ears or anything like that, that's not me, that's this person. Now, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the physical understanding of, well, I'm not the person viewing this, or I'm not the person, because you are in fact watching these things, but it's not you that is perceiving it. It is the body, and you are aware of those things. So, sorry, there's a notification coming up. So, basically, the next thing I'm going to talk about is awareness. There's a certain level of awareness that you may begin to notice yourself entering into, and that is it depends on what you realize. For example, I was noticing these assumptions in the things that the mind was saying. Things like, well, even when you say, like, I did this thing, right? Not only is there this I that is the person, but this person did this thing. So let's say the example is I ran down the street, right? I would notice this and I would say, I ran down the street. So first we're making the assumption that I is me, right? So I recognize that I is the person. Then it says ran down the street. So now this ran is interesting because ran is something created. Ran does not exist in the natural world. Ran is differentiating between walking and running. So I notice this line that has been drawn. I notice it. I don't do anything else. I just notice that there is a ran that requires a walk. Do you see what I mean? Anything that is assumed is not a truth. This ran and walk is something that we've created. What if, our language had developed differently, where running and walking were the same word, right? There was no difference, and we never said fast walking, or it was the differentiation that causes the assumption. So first you recognize the I, then you recognize the ran as the assumption, and then you hear, I ran down the street, and then you hear this down, and that's just funny to me. But then you say the street. So down requires an up, and that's also relative. If you think about it, in space, there is no direction. Even when we created the globe, I believe my biology teacher told me this in like 9th grade. When we created the globe that we use, the reason that north is north on the globe is because there was a country, the person who created the globe lived in a country and he wanted to put his country at the top of the planet. So he created the globe in a way so that his country would be on the top instead of the bottom, right? So the point that I'm making is that up and down are also created. Now, that's all relative in space, right? So there's the I ran down the street. So now there's a street, which requires drawing another line, saying that the street is somehow separate from the sidewalk and the grass. And the thing is, you don't have to convince yourself this. I started to hear the mind say, there was a time where I heard the mind saying something like, yeah, but is there a separation between my body? I mean, it seems like there is. And then I recognized that this was the person that was worrying about this. This is the person that was trying to figure it out. And I would begin to recognize once again that the body is not separate. And this is crazy because it requires no logic and it actually makes you ponder the possibilities. Well, it doesn't make you ponder. It makes the person ponder the possibilities of your view of reality. Because when I started to notice the lines between things, the lines began to fade and I could not recognize any lines. There was even a point where I recognized my assumption that there was something behind objects. Like if I have my hand here, I don't know the computer is behind my hand. So what this created was, instead of a 3D view on reality, I actually saw reality in a two-dimensional way. Like it was very interesting. My dog was walking around the room, and instead of looking like a dog walking around the room, it looked more like a worm kind of passing through a two-dimensional space. And that's what I mean. It's like we have these assumptions, and when you notice the assumptions, you begin to see with an objective reality. And the objective reality is so strange because if you can notice enough about your assumptions, then reality changes and unfolds, and it'll completely collapse. You'll just look at it an entirely different way. And so these experiences are different. I've had I have 3 experiences, and they were all different. And I think what I understand now is that it's because I'm believing different things in these different examples. So I may not actually know what I'm talking about, right? These are only 3 experiences that I had. And from what I understand, whatever I began to notice as an assumption is what began to fall away. But this is something you have to do. It's not something you do. It's, you're already doing it now. It's just that you're not paying attention. It's like when you're really tired, and I'm really excited, and I start telling you about my day, and I'm like, and this happened, and that happened, and you're just like, and then the next day, you wake up, and I ask you, like, or, you say something, and I'm like, no, I told you yesterday, that thing changed. It's because you weren't paying attention. And so, you're already looking at the thoughts, you're already hearing what I'm saying in the example. You're already hearing what I'm saying, it's not registering. So, when I say registering, I don't mean a knowledge or a logical understanding, which is something that's important. It's noticing. This requires no logic because it does not require your mind. All it requires is a noticing of the things that you're assuming. And so the possibilities, I don't know. I don't know what the possibilities are. And honestly, it doesn't matter because the fundamental belief, the one that keeps everything in check, is the person. So, no matter how deep you dive into this awareness of the person and all his assumptions, the number one thing that will keep you in this state is a recognition that the thoughts are not you. You don't have to pay so much attention once you get used to it. Because I'll tell you what happened to me. I started paying a lot of attention because I kind of got excited. And I started paying a lot of attention. And that's when everything began to get weird. Like my dog passing through the room like a worm because everything looked like two-dimensional reality. There were things like that started happening. And it got to a point where like I was at a level of awareness where doing anything made no sense. I even thought to myself, I have to go to the bathroom, or I should go to the bathroom, or something like that. And I heard this thought, and I thought, well, I noticed this person is not me. And then, how can you go somewhere when you're everything, or when you are all things? Even to say there are happenings is to differentiate between non-happenings, like saying that this is staying still and this thing is moving. And even that is an assumption within itself. And so, for me to say, I have to go to the bathroom, even saying the bathroom is to assume two things. One, that this is difficult. One, that the bathroom is a separate thing from the rest of everything else, and two, that a bathroom even exists because I can't see it right now. Even right now, the door is closed, so I don't really know that there's a bathroom. I can assume that there's a bathroom. But what happens is you reach a state where nothing really... It's very blissful, but it's, I don't know, I just rather recognize that the person is not me, but not pay so much attention to the physical, to all the assumptions. Now, I will admit, even when I say that I would rather do something, that is assuming that this person is me. And so therefore, I just am. So if you find yourself in a state, just be. Don't say, well, that was a little weird and I don't want to do that again. Because then you're a person again. you can then recognize that the person is not you. But this, see, I'm entering a territory I don't quite understand, and I don't even claim to understand any of this. But one of the few mistakes that I made is that I began to realize that I could kind of believe anything I wanted to. But the person does not want, see, so it's more about paying attention and noticing. But when I kind of established this in my mind, I grabbed back onto the person and said, this is me. And the reason that happened was because instead of recognizing the person was not me, I made a conclusion. Any conclusions are the person. Any understandings are the person. Even right now as I speak, this person seems to have an understanding of an experience that the self had, that the self saw. You'll experience different anomalies. Like, one of the realizations I had is that the awareness that exists as me and everyone else is no different from the physical reality, and they are one and the same. And that was interesting, because I felt an awareness in everything. And I can't really explain that or really go into it. But, this is all about noticing the things that the person assumes. So, anytime that you hear that you need to do something, or you need to go somewhere, or anything like this, no, it's not true, and I'll tell you why it's not true. The self, who you really are, is not the mind, but a spectator of the mind. You are a awareness that exists without form, everywhere, at all places. You could say you're omnipresent. You could even say that you are omnipotent. You could even say that you are omniscient, in the sense that everything is you, and therefore everything that exists you inherently know of yourself. So every person that knows something, you know. Every object and every happening in the universe is also you. Now that's getting to the physical reality. I want to focus on the awareness side of this. This is, I know this is random, but these are apple stickers. I started eating apples, and I started sticking the stickers to my wall. And the only reason I bring it up is because I figured someone was going to comment about it anyways. But anyways, the awareness is really important. So just know, without information or backing or any form of knowledge, that you are timeless. You exist outside of time. You always are, you always have been, and you always will be, except there's something weird about that. Even saying that there was an existence and will be an existence is false. So that's also an assumption. You have a memory. And the reason you have a memory is because all these different events have affected the state or form of your mind. So your memory is not bringing the reality back to me. If I say, what did you eat for lunch yesterday? And you say, oh, well, I had a nice grilled cheese sandwich and some tea. And I say, okay, show me. And you're like, what? Show me your grilled sandwich and tea. Show me yesterday. You can't. You could show me a picture, which is not yesterday. It is a arrangement of colors that exist on a piece of paper or on your phone as a bunch of lights arranged in a certain order that to you create a visual representation of a picture. So the reality of yesterday is gone. Now, yesterday has left an effect on video cameras, on the mind, on whatever happened yesterday. For example, yesterday a flower grew out of the ground, or let's say over the period of a week, there was a seed, and at the end of the week there was a flower. So the effects that happen on one day, the water and the sun, all kind of came together into this, and without it, there would be no flower, right? So the past has changed the effect of the present, but the past is gone. It no longer exists. So we could even say that we don't know this, but let's say it's 31 minutes. Let's say 35 minutes ago, reality finally started. And I mean, it didn't have a beginning before that, but it started. And the way it started was with everything the way it is now. With history of Steve Jobs, his bones in the ground, this computer that I'm looking at, this MacBook, this laptop, this TV, this bed, all existing where it did when creation started. I was born in this adult form with these memories of this past that never happened. We don't know for sure that there even was a before. There is nothing that you can know. All you can know is that you are. And that is all. All you can know is that you is. Okay? That's all. So, anytime you notice a thought that says otherwise, notice it. And then you'll hear the mind go, oh, I noticed it. I did what Trey said. And then you can notice, I did this. You can notice that it's someone else. You can notice that this Trey person is not someone else or even exists. And the reason I don't exist is because you can't perceive me. So how do you know that I exist? In fact, right after this video is uploaded, I could be incinerated, and you would be thinking of a memory and an assumption that I even exist, or that I even exist in the first place. Who knows? Maybe this is a computer animation putting me together in this form, and that in reality I don't actually exist as a person, but instead as a computer-generated reality that is projected on your screen that you're watching. But the thing is, I want you to understand that this example I just gave you is of the mind. I came up with a logic behind it. I came up with maybe it's a computer-generated reality. This is the way the mind thinks. The self just notices that it is not true, notices that it is of the person, notices that there are assumptions in the dialogue. The dialogue is the person's dialogue. So, I don't have much more to say, but I felt it was important that I make a video so that if any of you ever, first, I want you to be able to come into this state, which is funny that I say that because you are in this state. It's just that the person is so distracting. So what I want is that I want you to know that the mind is no longer needed. The mind is no longer needed. How can you even worry about tomorrow when you don't even know it exists? Right now, everything could end. It could just stop, just cease, or everything could just instantaneously explode, or just, it doesn't matter. The point is, all you really have is now. And even that, you're looking at the the physical realm around you, and you are assuming that that exists. So I just want you to know, you don't have to understand anything. You are already who you are, which is I. We are the same person. This person isn't the right word. Person is a description of an outline that doesn't actually exist, of a being that we call human that also doesn't exist. There's no separation. It exists in the mind. Even language can start to look funny, like Chinese, or just weird sounds. It just depends on what you recognize as assumptions. And then your reality starts to change around you. But the most important thing that you notice is that this person is not you. Every time this person says, oh, I want this, or oh, blah, blah, blah about that, that's not you. You do not exist as this person. This person does exist. Maybe. But that's not you. You are much bigger than that. You are everything at once. You are the whole. You are all. You are beyond the universe. Because even to assume that the end of the universe, the edge of the universe is a line, is to make an assumption that it is the end, that there is not more. And if you think about it, if you think about the multiverse, the realm of possibility within the multiverse, we could just be one flat frame called the universe. And the rest could be all the other possibilities of existence. But that doesn't matter. We don't need an understanding. The moment there's an understanding or a voice, that is not you. You just are. You don't even understand English. You are English. You are the words coming out of my mouth. You are the sound waves bouncing off my walls, if that even exists. You are the light hitting my face, if light even exists. To have light requires darkness, and so in saying that, you are also drawing a line, saying that there is light and there is dark, instead of just recognize the phenomenon that is. Just notice. That's all you need, is just to notice. And you don't even need that, because you are already doing it. So, don't try to understand this with the mind. I can already hear people saying, well, if I'm already doing it, then I don't need to do anything. And I'll say, yeah, you don't. Which doesn't mean carry about your life the way you've always carried about it. It means stop trying so hard. Because in your life, I can almost guarantee that you are trying to do something, that you have these things you want. And even if you don't want anything long term and you're only in the moment, you're still wanting things like, oh man, I want to score that chick, bro. Like, that is of the person. That is not of you. So you can exist as you do now, as long as you recognize that it is the person that has these wants, not you. That's all I have to say. This may go on MBTV. I hope you guys, well, anything I could say is inaccurate. But whatever happens, have a beautiful life. Have a beautiful journey. And don't worry about your path, because eventually you'll make it anyways. So, namaste. And have a beautiful day.